Please rise for invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Is the pastor here?
It looks like.
Oh, bring it. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Let us pray. Father God, as we begin this time of city business, Father, Lord, every month we have business here to attend to with the city. And Father, walking in this room, it's obvious that there are changes and there are differences now. Father, I pray tonight as we begin our time of business, Father God, that you would bless this group that's here. Father God, that you would guide them. Father, that you would help them to do what you've called them to do. Father, I know there's a lot of tension and anxiety and stress amongst those who are in leadership. Father, there must be because it's everywhere. But I do ask that you would, Lord, just bring a sense of calm to those who need it. And Father God, that you would help us to understand, Father, that ultimately you are in control. You always have been and you always will be. Father, I pray for the folks that are speaking tonight. Father, I pray that everything goes according to your plan. Father, we ask all of this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor, thanks for doing that for us. Appreciate it. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Ford.
Present.
Councilmember Tremont.
Here.
Councilmember Stoll.
Here.
Vice Mayor Baxter.
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here.
I like all the space we have.
With the item 13 is not going to be heard on consent tonight because of the cancellation of those events. So with that, can I get a approval for the meeting agenda without item 13?
Do we do the public comments first?
No, this is the agenda, motion to approve the agenda for the evening
Oh, okay. That's,
without item 13.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented without item 13. We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have an agenda for the evening. With that, now we're looking for public comments on the consent agenda items. Where's Robert? Oh, there he is. We can count on you.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 North Dexter Drive. I wanted to talk about 7B, which is the rebid for scanning services. This thing talks about there being something like 18 million documents that they're going to get ultimately scanned in, which includes past 30 years. But what I wanted to say was that this seems to be a really good opportunity to bring something in-house. We already see the things on the agenda that get scanned in, so why not just bring the whole thing in-house? And then the other is 14, item 14, which has to do with the ambulance service. And rather than get an ambulance that's a substitute for a substitute, I would recommend that you consider that the thing should go to the county, and the county should be told to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a motion on the consent agenda. Items 6 through 12 and 14 are the items to be considered.
I think number 9 has a revision to a resolution that was sent out earlier today.
Sent out earlier, yes.
Yes.
So we approve it with the,
It's posted to the website as well,
Mm-hmm.
the changes.
So if we can go, Matt, in that regard, we can accept a motion to approve that item as been updated. So items 6 through 12 and 14, I'm looking for some kind of motion.
motion to approve and include the updated resolution, item 9.
You're talking about items 6 through 12 and 14?
Yes.
So
Second.
we have a motion to approve items 6 through 12 and 14 including the update that was presented today on item 9. Call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stillman.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Basham.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Sorry.
Yes. Somebody forget their name over there?
Yeah.
I was slow there.
I knew I'm after him, and I'm just like, yeah.
And that brings the city council into a short recess while Eastport CRA meets. I would motion that since the chair and vice chair are not present, that, I'm sorry, Eastport, Drew is here.
Yeah,
It's-
we're good. on
It's the
this
next
one.
one I need to make a motion for, so. Mr. Chair,
All right.
do your thing with Eastport.
All right, we'll call the Eastport CRA redevelopment agency meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Chase Tremont.
Here.
Scott Siltner.
Here.
Don Burnett.
Here.
Marilyn Ford.
Present.
Drew Bastian.
Present. Discussion action, item 1, approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Can I get a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, and item 2 is the Eastport Business CRA annual report, so we're moving to accept that report as
Move.
delivered. It's available in PDF.
Move to accept the report.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second to accept the Eastport report. We need to call the roll, or, no, we don't need to call the roll now. Okay, so, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? It passes. We will move to public comments. Any public comments for Eastport? None? There being none, move to board comments at this time. Any comments from the board on this one? None? There being none, we are good. Motion to adjourn this meeting. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
If you want to do it that way, sure, I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Nice job, Drew.
All right. That brings us to the Town Center CRA. The chair and vice chair are not present, so I'm going to do what I did last time, and I'm going to motion to have Member Chase Tremont run the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair? it's
You
your
didn't
name.
ask anyone who was opposed. I don't have a script. so Thanks for the heads up.
Get the agenda? I won't get too close, but I'll nurse you through it.
While you find it, I'll go with roll call if you want.
Yes,
What a
quickly
great
call
idea.
the roll.
Marilyn Ford.
Present.
Drew Bastian.
Here?
Scott Siltner.
Here.
Don Burnett.
Here?
Ray Donadio. Stan Schmidt. And Chase Tremont.
Here.
You're welcome to just
Sounds-
not together in those empty seats.
Who's that one?
Since there's enough of them, you're welcome to.
Get it?
Approval of minutes, item B1.
All right. Item B1, we have a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th, 2019.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Item 2, Economic Incentive Agreement with Dunlawton Village LLC.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the economic incentive agreement for Dunlawton Village.
We have a
Second.
motion to approve, and we have a second.
Item is open
Who's
and on the
presenting?
floor, sir.
Tim Berman, Community Development. We have a request for economic development incentive agreement here for the Dunlawton Village project located at 415 Dunlawton Avenue, right across the street from Atlantic Marine, the last project that received the same exact kind of setup. So we basically have both agreements here. There's the TIF sharing, which follows the ordinance that was adopted in 2017. And there's also a request for the Chapter 20 incentives, which is about half the development fees in terms of site plan, building permit application fees that would be reimbursed to the property owner for their project there. It's nearing completion. I think it's a very good project there, a redevelopment on that side, and something that kind of got spearheaded by staff, mainly Penny, about 10 years ago, to get that out of industrial use into commercial office use, which kind of got where we are today then. So I believe the engineer for the project's here and can ask any questions, but again, this was using the same format agreement that we kind of established for these moving forward in CRA, that was created with Atlantic Marine. And then
Okay.
Chapter 20 is something that you've seen before here with targeted businesses, as this one's going to increase the number of businesses in the area and also jobs in the area. So I'm here for any questions then.
Any comments from the board? We'll start with Marilyn.
Well, it's a great project. It's actually in the River District. And I will say that there are a number of occupied units already. There's 6 new jobs. Gas Realty, once they're finished with their building, they're projecting at least 50 new agents. So it really satisfies the conditions and purpose of providing this economic incentive. So it's something I'm really in favor for, and I think it's a quality project. It really adds a nice little lift to Dunlawton in that area.
I agree. Thank you. Mayor?
Ditto.
Drew?
Yeah, basically the same as Maryland. You know, they were operating out of an existing house that was very old, and built another building behind them, switch their operation to there, and then build a new building, and it just turned out terrific. And it definitely good for the area. So certainly in favor of it.
Scott?
Echo the same comments, and just happy to support something like this for folks that are willing to make this kind of an investment in that river district and in our city, especially for a lot of them that have been making that investment for a long haul. It's great to see. So this is an easy one.
Yeah, I agree. Anytime you see, you always hear about new stuff happening on Dunlawton or on the west side of town, but one of the biggest pushes that I think we've been working at as a council is trying to get that redevelopment of the east side. And every time we see something like this is a positive. Would the applicant like to address?
I'll be very brief. My name is Joe Hopkins, for the record. I'm with the Performance Group at 100 Marina Point Drive in Daytona Beach. And I just want to tell you, this project is a testament to the city's land development code and the diligence with staff. It's been a real pleasure and a remarkable outcome. It's a great example of redevelopment, and we really appreciate all the support that we've gotten for this.
Thank you.
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No, but we welcome more.
All right. This is an easy
None
one.
of that.
Yeah, we welcome more.
Anybody from the public wish to speak?
I'm
Anybody?
Andrea Davis, president,
Hey,
owner.
come on
Property.
up.
That's it.
Well, that's,
Come on up.
that's it.
Huh?
Come on up for a
You'd like to
second.
come on up, please?
You've done it now.
You didn't know you were
I
getting.
love Penny. Penny inspired me so many years ago when we traded those zoning. And she just kept at me over and over again. All I can say is I love you, Penny.
Can you state your name again
My
for
whole
the,
team, they helped me do this, so.
can you state your name for the record,
I'm
please?
Andrea Davis,
All right.
president and owner of Dunlawton Village and Gas Realty.
Excellent.
And your whole team at the building department was so inspirational, and they helped me all the way through. They made my project go quicker than normal, and it was just wonderful, and I hope to do more.
I love it.
That's great to
Okay.
hear.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Turned
thank
out
you.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Always good hearing those comments about our staff as well. I think they're
They were
terrific.
so good. You couldn't ask for better people.
Appreciate those words.
Careful, Penny's head's gonna be swelling here in a second.
Great.
Penny, we got all that on record. It's all recorded. We're good.
I think that's what makes our community development staff is who they are. They can get comments like that and doesn't go to their head. Their humility shines through every time they present. I appreciate that. Back to us. Any final comments from the board? All right. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Marilyn Ford,
Yes.
Drew Bastian,
Yes.
Scott Stelner,
Yes.
Bob Burnett,
Yes.
Chase Tremont.
Yes.
Just
And
one quick request, if it's necessary for us to stay for the second part of this, we can, myself and Andrea can exit if you need us for the council part.
I don't know if we,
Just in case there was citizen comment, but I
for the,
wouldn't expect
during the
it.
meeting?
Yeah, they're.
That's up to you.
Could we
I'm not,
move the
You can't
item
open
up?
it up. You can't open it up
not
to
here, but
council.
when we resume, we can move it up.
Which item number is it?
24.
That's right, you guys come before us later in the agenda, and it's after the,
We can do that after we convene this.
You can, yeah, you
You
can
can't do it out now?
close the
Okay.
CRA.
Just give us
and then
just
bring
give
it
us a
in.
couple minutes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, should be 2 seconds.
Item number 3, Port Orange Town Center CRA Annual Report.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to accept the fiscal year 2018-2019 annual report for the Port Orange Town Center Community Redevelopment Agency.
Second. Give it to Marilyn, Robin.
We have a motion and a second, seconded by Marilyn Ford.
Keep the score over there.
Any comments? There being none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign? No. All right. Any public comments? No? Any final comments from the board?
Good to go.
We are adjourned.
And we reconvene as council. That brings us to citizen participation non-agenda. Robin, do I have any? Brings us all the way to council comments. Item 15, council comments. Marilyn, let's start with you.
I have one comment and then a motion on the agenda. My one comment is that our contract with our lobbyists, the Pittman Group, is up in June. And while the manager could approve it under authority we've delegated, probably the last time it went out to bid was 2017. And with other contracts, we typically do it 2 or 3 years with an add-on. So I just think it's smart business that we take a look at it. In no way is this any reflection on Mr. Pittman. In no way is my comment any reflection on the manager and his judgment. I just think when we're talking about professional services such as that, and it's a very important one because the Pittman Group really advocates our positions up in Tallahassee, and you know, with this year, it looks like there's been some success with some things we
$250,000 for the
Yeah.
House Street Flood Control Project?
So,
That's a big yes.
I guess I would just offer to council that my perception that I think it might be a good idea to bring it back, or authorize the manager to do a 1-year extension with the intent
To
to
bring-
have a call out next
next
year
year.
in 2021. I just think, you know, any of the contracts we've got, it's part of our role in due diligence, so the public knows we're always looking for, you know, a competitive field.
And normally, I would say in the interest of time, time is just a different thing in this world right now.
Yeah, it is, it's crazy.
I would, in that regard, maybe we want to look at it in 2021.
But, and then my other request would be that we move up item 24 on the agenda after our comments, so that in the interest of, you know, minimizing exposure, the people that were before us could, we could discharge that agenda item, and then they could depart and we could do the rest of the business.
You want to make that,
Motion
put that in
that.
the form of a motion?
Well, we're still at council comments. If you want a motion, I'll.
Give me a motion right now.
Right
I'll
now,
take it.
okay. I would move that we take consideration of item 24, economic incentive agreement with Dunlawton Village, and consider it once all of council comments have concluded.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a proper second to move item 24 to immediately following item 15. And before I take a vote on that, normally I would preface that by saying that when you're moving something up to help somebody, that also means you're moving other things back. So I'm not fond of that, but these are not normal times. Any other comments on that? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. What else you got?
That's it.
All right. Chase, you're on.
No comments tonight, Mayor.
Excellent, excellent job. Drew,
What Chase said.
even better. Excellent job. Scott,
I'm gonna have a couple. Sorry to break the streak.
No worries.
bring them on.
No
We
worries,
got the
my
bookends
friend.
going here.
So I just wanna, Marilyn's comments, I think, are very well taken, and I agree. But we didn't do it for the golf course. So, but I do think that, you know, I just wanna say that I think the Pittman Group does a fabulous job representing us up there, and, but that being said, I still think that we should always be looking for ways to see what's in the market, see what's out there. If we're not trying to do that, then are we truly doing the best service for the residents? So I appreciate Marilyn's comments there. The other thing I just wanted to mention is, I think we need to look at a discussion item, either in a council meeting or maybe a workshop. We seem to be getting some parameter interest in the River District and the Riverwalk properties, and some of those interests may or may not be a little bit inconsistent with some of the vision that we've had over the years. And maybe it's just time to just take a holistic look at that and see, do we need to change that vision up a little bit, you know, because I know just in the short time that I've been on council for 5 years, you know, I've had casual conversations with, well, what can go there and what can go here, and what's the vision, and you know, the vision obviously that was 20 plus years ago has changed over those years, and maybe it needs to change some more. I don't know, but I do think it's something, an appropriate topic we need to probably get out in public and have some good discussion on, and try to feel out some of that vision, and maybe just kind of revise it a little bit. So just wanted to make that suggestion. Maybe a workshop's probably the most appropriate place for something like that, but we just need to look at it. Plus, I think there's some strategic things that have occurred over the last few years that maybe have changed things and put some other options on the table for us as a city. We need to look at that stuff and have Jake and his staff bring us all up to speed on that stuff. So that's all I got.
Okay. A couple things. As we all know, the governor made a proclamation today to order the closing for 30 days as of 5 p.m. of all bars and nightclubs. Restaurants were not included in that, but they were requested that they seat appropriately, no more than 50% of their capacity to maintain staffing. I don't know how we go about enforcing those things, but I tell you what, that shows you exactly how serious the state government is taking this, and we need to be able to support them and take our lead from the governor as much as is possible in this regard. Also,
I'm sorry, on that note.
No, go ahead.
So did he make that as condition of their licensing that they hold, and then if that's the case, is that something that the state?
It's an executive order, so yeah, they can.
So it would be the state departments that have to enforce that and
Yeah.
regulate that,
Mhm.
not cities, right?
We were on.
How does that?
Oh,
Let's see what the city attorney
I
says.
think I heard a voice.
Hey, so we do have enforcement authority on executive orders and 252.
In and out. You might have to take the vote. There you go.
So we have authority to enforce the executive orders under 252-47. We've had the conversation, the chief and I were talking this afternoon. It would be a second-degree misdemeanor to violate an order that's promulgated under Chapter 252, which that would be one. So we've had some discussions. We're identifying the bars in Port Orange that this would apply to. I think we've come up with like 6 to 8. There's a list. Community development helped us get that together, and we've had those conversations today. So we're prepared to get out there and primarily educate first, try to let these folks know what's going on, and then take whatever action we need to.
Okay. Well, my other comment in regards to that is that our service industry, which the state of Florida is so reliant on for employment, we're being crippled. And I'm not saying that this is the best time in the world to go out and eat for dinner, but you're going to get tired of eating at home every night. It's okay to order carry out. Those places, in any way that, you know, maybe a carry out order doesn't help a server with a tip, but at least it keeps the kitchen, it keeps their business going. But let's keep in mind, there are a lot of mom and pop restaurants in this town. And there are a lot of people, even whether it's a mom and pop restaurant or not, there are a lot of people employed in the restaurant industry. I'm worried about hotels, I'm worried about restaurants, we're worried about travel. It seems like that there's a lot going on with that, and we're going to have repercussions for this in lost revenues for years. So when we talk about what we got this year from the state of Florida with the House Street Flood Control Project, those dollars might not be available for the next couple of years. I don't know yet, but let's keep all that in mind. Right now, we need to help our friends and our neighbors, and certainly that is part of that. There is a call tonight that Florida Department of Emergency Management is doing at 8 p.m. Jake, I'd asked
Yes, sir.
Alan, if you have monitoring that, if there's anything new and salient. I asked him if he could report to us at the end of the meeting during council committee reports, and if there is nothing to report, then that's fine too. We no need to add to the agenda unnecessarily, but I wanted to let you know I'd made that
Yes,
request
sir.
of him.
Thank you.
Jake, you're going to have to consider what to do with rec sports sooner than later, because
I already have, sir.
with what the state of Florida is doing with schools.
I already have. I'll talk about that during CM comments unless you want to hear them now.
No, we can wait till then.
Okay.
All right, and I'll leave that for another meeting. And then, of course, Jake, I would just request in the next 30 to 60 days, anything that we can do to streamline these agendas. I know that there are things that we advertise, and every time you have to advertise something, postponements cause even more difficulties. But anything that we can do to streamline these agendas, because I am concerned about public participation. We get a lot of public participation by people who watch us online, but I don't, at the same time, I think we need to streamline as best we can. And Jake, I know that the city managers, you guys are communicating 3 times a week. Stay in touch with your counterparts and see what they're doing as well. I think that we all need to try to do it the same way as best as is possible. But I just wanted to share my concern with you on that.
Yes, sir. We'll try to keep it as streamlined as can. With some of the executive orders that have gone out and some of the other items that will probably start to stall, I think a lot less items will come to us to add onto the agenda.
Very good. With that, brings us to item 24. That is a public hearing item. Public hearing on item number 24 is now open. Need a motion to approve the economic incentive agreement for Dunlawton Village LLC.
So moved.
Second.
We have a proper motion second for item 24 to approve the economic incentive agreement. We have heard from staff. Would anyone from the public like to speak to this item again? Everybody's good? Council comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0.
Thank you all very much, appreciate it.
Congratulations.
You've been paroled. Closing the public hearing portion, that public hearing portion of the meeting. Bringing us back to item 16, proclamation for Government Finance Professionals Week. Dr. Scott Niels, why don't you come up here and let me actually read this to you, since we have a government finance professional in the office here. Whereas the Florida Finance Officers Association is a professional association founded in 1937 and serves more than 3,300 professionals from state, county, and city governments, school districts, colleges and universities, special districts, and private firms. And whereas the FGFOA is dedicated to being a professional resource for providing opportunities through education, networking, leadership, and information. And whereas the inaugural Government Finance Professionals Week, sponsored by FGFOA and all of its members government organizations, is a week-long series of activities aimed at recognizing government finance professionals and the vital services that they provide for our state and our community. And whereas during this week, government finance professionals throughout the state of Florida will be acknowledged for their hard work, dedication, and leadership. Now therefore, I, Donald O. Burnett, Mayor of the City of Port Orange, Florida, do hereby proclaim the week of March 16th to 20th of 2020 as Government Finance Professionals Week in the City of Port Orange, and extend our appreciation for all government finance professionals throughout the state and here and in the City of Port Orange for their hard work and dedication and leadership. And with the seal of the city, my signature, it is so declared. And I would come down and shake your hand, but I will stand within
That's
6
not what
feet
we're
of
doing.
you and take a quick picture, because I can see Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. My staff and I really appreciate the support of council
Yes, sir.
and the city manager's office. It's a tough job, but we really enjoy it, and we work hard for the citizens and for you to do it right. Thank you.
There you go. We'll do that so you
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Bobby Ball is not here, so I guess 17 doesn't have.
Well, actually, Bobby did send us an email, and
Oh, nice.
I did want to read his comment because that was going to be part of his report. So if you give me just a second. Board appointments, interviews, and reports. Item 17, Citizen Advisory Committee for TPO. This is the part where Bobby Ball would come running up, but instead I'm going to read an email to him saying that he'll not be in attendance today, but he also understands that we have on the agenda to consider the proposed project priority list for the TPO. He has reviewed it and would support it as asked. Also, if approved by council and transmitted to staff the TPO, he plans to volunteer for the ranking subcommittee, which I like a lot when he's involved in that, and will move to keep Port Orange projects as high as possible on the list as possible future funding becomes available. And as always, he's available for any follow-ups of the city council as far as giving him direction. And I guess that's the end of his report. Which brings us to Fire Pension Board Trustee reappointment. I will accept nominations. I know we have one Mr. Chris Taylor.
And I believe that's the only one.
I would accept a nomination.
I nominate Chris Taylor for the Fire Pension Board.
Second?
I
We have-
currently serve with Mr. Taylor, and I can tell you that he's very informed, very diligent, and I think his continuing on the Fire Pension Board would add depth and history to our work.
Okay. We have a nomination. We have a second. Are there any other nominations? Without any other nominations, nominations are now closed. We've had, does anyone else want to speak? We've heard Marilyn. No one else wants to
I
speak?
agree with her.
Okay. No one else? That's fine. In that case, we will call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. I hope he likes our benefits and pay. Really, honestly, all our boards, people volunteer their time and their talent without pay or compensation. It was really something that we appreciate, and we have an embarrassment of riches when I take a look at all our boards, including that one. Brings us back to public hearing portion of the meeting. Item 19. Public hearing is now open. Item 19 is the second reading of ordinance 2020-4. Ordinance number 2020-4, even though it says ordinance number 2020-XX. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to read that as ordinance number 2020-4. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Article 2 of the Code of Ordinance to establish Section 2-33, providing for the ex officio duties of City Council, providing for codification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a couple of seconds. I'll let Robin figure that out. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. This was a little bit of cleanup that the city attorney recommended to us. Matt, did you want to comment or add anything to what we've already discussed of that in the first reading? Council, questions of the city attorney?
No.
Anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us, final comments. There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. You're gonna make a recommendation, aren't you?
I'm going to ask you, Mayor, if you so choose, to open items 20 and 21 together.
I had a feeling. You have a little track record there. Item 20 is the first reading of ordinance number 2020-5, which is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, relating to comprehensive planning, amending ordinance 2008-9 to remove the vehicular trip cap as applied to plus or minus 6.71 acres of the subject property located at 5840 and 5850 Journey's End Way, providing for conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Move to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a proper second. Item 20 is now open on the floor for discussion. Item 21 is, as I click over to that, ordinance number 2020-6, which is the Fourth Amendment to the Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan for Journey's End Plan Commercial Development. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, providing for the Fourth Amendment to the Master Development Agreement for Journey's End, FKA, the Peacock Way Planned Commercial Development, PCD, and the Conceptual Development Plan, CDP, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion approved?
Second.
We have a motion and a proper second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion.
Penelope Cruz, Planning.
Apparently favorite person of, well, that was nice to hear.
That's one of my
that.
favorite
Andrea.
projects. It was really fun thing for the River District to see happen. So.
Good stuff.
Yep. So the first item I'm going to start with is item 20. This item actually includes two properties. It's the vacant parcel in between Country Inn Suites and Extra Space Storage, and as well as Extra Space Storage. The applicant is requesting that the vehicular trip cap that was placed on the property in 2008 through the Volusia Growth Management Review process at the request of the City of New Smyrna Beach be removed. In 2008, the Planning Commission and the City Council on first reading approved the motion to change the land use of both of these properties to commercial without a trip cap, with the intent that when there was an actual end user and site plan in place, that they would follow our standard transportation concurrency requirements. And then, however, a trip cap was added after the project went through the Volusia County Growth Management Review at the request of the City of New Smyrna Beach in order to minimize potential impacts to I-95. At that time, the property owner didn't have an end user in place, and in the interest of moving the item through the process without any holdups, went ahead and agreed to that request. At this time, the property owner does have, a potential end user and would like to be able to just follow the same regulations as any property in the City of Port Orange. The trip cap was only at the request of New Smyrna Beach. It wasn't based on any traffic analysis or data or any end user or site plan. And so the applicant is basically asking for it to be removed, for them to be on the same playing field as any property in the City of Port Orange. And when a site plan is potentially submitted at some point in the future, to be able to just play by the same rules as everybody else and follow standard transportation concurrency. That's item 20. Item 21 is only regarding the vacant commercial piece between Country Inn Suites and Extra Space Storage. This is the proposed Fourth Amendment to the PCD for this area. And it basically is one request is to add hotel to the list of permitted uses on the property, and then amend the concept plan to lay out a concept for a potential hotel going on that property. The master development agreement for the existing PCD on this property currently allows for restaurants, banks, professional and medical offices, and retail sales and services on this property. And so the request is to add one additional use of hotel. If this area were to fall under conventional city zoning, it would likely be zoned interchange commercial or highway commercial, both of which allow for hotels as a standard permitted use. The applicant is not requesting to deviate from any requirements of the Land Development Code, and as part of any future site improvements, we would be required to meet all the requirements of the Land Development Code with regard to site design and concurrency. They are here and would like to speak to their item.
Any questions of Penny before we hear from them?
Do have one of Penny.
Mhm.
Given that the original vehicular trip cap was
Mhm.
put in by the Volusia County Growth
Growth
Management
Management, mhm.
Commission, when we take action, will this have to go back to Volusia County?
Yes, ma'am, that's why it's being processed as a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment. We are amending the original ordinance that it was adopted under, so that if it were to be approved tonight on first reading, the next action would be to transmit to the Volusia Growth Management Commission, all adjacent local governments, and only after it was certified by them would it then be able to come back for second reading.
Okay, which also is to say that New Smyrna?
Correct.
Will have to individually look at it?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any sense of where they are with it?
We've spoken to their staff has recently changed,
Mm,
but
gotcha.
my understanding is that there wouldn't be any concerns at this point. It was a different environment back then.
Staff concerns.
And that is, that's all the way up to the city manager level, so.
Okay.
The
Well, because
the-
it seems to me that if you have engineers that apply vehicular trip caps, and those are things that planners use, and they're sort of known standards.
It wasn't an engineer that applied it. It was an arbitrary request
No, I
from their
understand
planning
that.
staff.
I
Okay.
understand that.
Okay.
But you have some documents in here that talk about trip caps and that type of thing?
It-
And
I'm
the
sorry, go ahead.
VGMC is also a different animal. They don't wield arbitrary power as much as they used to, so it's a
A little declawed.
it's a very good commission now as opposed to an arbitrary commission, which is some of those decisions made were a little bit of, we're fixing a lot of decisions that were made before
Okay,
to
thank you.
make them right.
I'm sorry,
Nope,
continue. I was just
that
asking.
was,
Nothing else for Penny?
Well, just one question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why does it matter what New Smyrna? That's-
So when you go through Volusia Growth Management Commission, and again, this was back in 2008, different environment, any adjacent local government can voice their opposition. And so back then, there was a different environment and people weren't playing nice in the sandbox, if you want to say, and and
Only
so
when you're going to Volusia Growth Management, okay.
So they voiced an opposition to Volusia Growth
gotcha.
Management, and at the time, there wasn't an end user in place, and the applicant just
Sure.
kind of said, okay, let's just keep it moving forward without really thinking through the implications long-term.
All right. That's stupid.
Any other questions of our staff person? Okay. Let's
Thanks,
hear
Penny.
from the representative.
You have two renderings, this one and this one. Which one do you want?
The one with the aerial's probably better.
They both say right.
Yeah.
That one? Or the other one?
Yeah. You might have to stay close. I mean, keep your social distance, but I don't operate those
Stay
things very
close,
well.
but don't stay too close?
Yeah, something like that. With social
Okay.
distance, I guess they call it. Rob Merrill for the record with Cobb Cole, 149 South Ridgewood in Daytona. Thanks for having the meeting tonight, by the way, to start. And thank you, Penny. Penny and Tim are exceptional in what they do. I deal with a lot of different jurisdictions, and these guys are some of the best in the business, so I'll continue pouring the praise in that direction. And when she gives you a thorough set of reports like this in her presentation tonight, it pretty much says it all, so I'm going to be brief. Todd Marshall is here with me. Todd's the owner of the property. Sands Lassiter, who I think you guys know, is here. He's our transportation consultant. And Matt Doust is in the back room over here. Everybody's got their proper distance, I think, so we plan that out. But they can come up and answer any questions you guys have. Matthew's our civil engineer, and Sands is our transportation consultant. Of course, Todd has, if you have any questions about the business aspects, he can answer. Penny gave you kind of a quick rundown of the analysis that's in the report. I'll say to you that I'm not going to go through those things systematically, but I hope you guys did. It provides what we call the competent substantial evidence that is in front of you for your decision tonight. It talks about comprehensive plan consistency. It talks about criteria in the Land Development Code, meeting those criteria, being consistent with the comp plan. All those boxes are checked off systematically in both of Penny's reports about both of these items. These are two pretty straightforward requests. I don't know all of the history, and you guys are asking good questions about how did that trip cap get there in the first place. As Penny mentioned, they're judging it as being arbitrary. Nobody knew where it came from. There was no systematic engineering formula that came up with a number here. It was a cautionary, I think, approach that New Smyrna sometimes would jump into these things. I've been involved in VGMC hearings with New Smyrna. You may know something about the Woodhaven project. That was a big VGMC hearing between New Smyrna and Port Orange. And, you know, sometimes crazy things come out of that process, and this was one of those, I think. I think the property owner said, look, we don't know what we're going to do on this middle piece. Let's let this cap go so we can continue forward, not to go to a VGMC hearing. And so they said, okay, when we come back with something, then we'll deal with it, which is now what we're doing. The reason why Sands is here is because he's looked at this already. He hasn't gone through a complete concurrency review yet because we're still at the zoning stage.
Right.
But I think he has a lot to say about, you know, improvements that have been done on the road network since that happened in 2008. A lot of things, and then things that are in the works, and I think your city manager could probably tell you more about that as well. And then things that when the property owner comes in to develop the land, he'll have to contribute. I think you guys all know about how concurrency has been working in Port Orange and in Volusia County of late. You know, I've had a lot of projects where heavy 7-figure contributions to the road network are being made as a result of things being built. So, you know, some people ask, well, why do I want a new shopping center? Why do I want a new hotel? Why do I want a new restaurant? They contribute because we want to fix these things that are clogging up the roads. Everybody says we don't want more traffic. Well, nobody does. Who would? But if there's a fix in line, I think that's part of the reason why you might answer the question. This is a good thing to have happen to the community. I will mention, and I don't know that Penny mentioned necessarily, but John Cheney, who's the county transportation engineer for many, many years, actually did give us his consent to using the concurrency method that everybody uses now instead of this trip cap. So when this does go through the VGMC process, Maryland, it's going to go through him and also through New Smyrna and anybody else that's an adjoining jurisdiction, and they'll have a chance to weigh in if they feel differently. So I think that's a safety valve that we have there. And then the other thing that we're here to talk about is adding a hotel use to this property. As Penny mentioned, or your report mentions, there are several other uses: banks, business services, offices, professional and medical, retail sales and service, financial services, restaurants. Those things are all in there already. Why hotel wasn't in that list, I have no idea. I would have written the PUD differently, I think. But as she also mentioned, the normal straight zoning categories for this setting would be either highway commercial or interchange commercial, which allows all these uses and hotels. So I think it fits. I think what you're hearing from your professional planning staff is, from a planning standpoint, a land planning standpoint, this is the right place for a hotel. When you know, one of the big things that we had, I meant to mention to you that we had a voluntary neighborhood meeting at the library. Invited all the neighbors out. I think one of the things we were most sensitive to was we have single-family residents to the east of us, and you know, when we're going through things that could be incompatible with each other, you want to make sure you guard against those incompatibilities affecting somebody negatively. So we talked to the folks about transportation impacts. Big thing. Anytime you're doing anything in Volusia County or state of Florida, they want to know what it's doing to the transportation network. They want to talk about interface between the uses. Can you do something to make it better? Our answer was yes. Here's some landscaping ideas. Here's some buffering ideas. We have an existing stormwater pond that serves as a sort of an open area, open space between the residents and the hotel anyway. So you'll see in your packet that we've got some design for, and you'll see on the overhead some design for additional landscaping. The property owner in the meeting with the homeowners, which I'd say was 20-something people at the meeting, agreed to do some additional concessions with masonry wall and/or concrete fencing along the back of the property, right adjacent to their residences, which is shown on the screen here, pending approval from the property owner association that owns that area where the pond is. Which Tom said he thought it was a good idea, so I guess he'll speak and we'll find out whether he agrees with that still. But I think it's a good idea for everybody. I think, you know, from my standpoint, and I don't see, you know, a whole group of the neighbors here. I think we satisfied their requirements. One of the other things they mentioned, and it's not really necessarily directly relevant to this, but I guess there's a dog walking park area that wraps around the back of the stormwater pond, and some of the neighbors don't like hearing the dogs, and so that was one of the other things that they complained about. And I guess to the extent we can try to remedy that, we'll be a participant in that. So it's not necessarily our property, but we're going to be part of trying to fix that problem that the neighbors are now living with. I would close by saying, you've got a great staff report on both of these. You've got all of the evidence in the file that says this is the right thing to do. So hopefully you guys will do that. And we're here for any questions you have.
Thank you, Rob. Line them up. Let's start on this side. Scott?
I appreciate the applicant taking the time to meet with the neighborhood and the folks that are most closely impacted, and also taking the time to meet with the elected body as well, one-on-one. These type of projects, it's great to kind of have that holistic view and discussion and kind of hear all the different concerns and things like that. Like I mentioned to you in our initial meeting, my concerns I think are relatively simple, but I also think they're relatively consistent with what we hear day in and day out with our residents, and that's the cautious growth of things in and around that part of the Dunlawton corridor that are going to remotely have any adverse effect. You're right, we're looking at some different ways to mitigate some of the traffic issues. We have high hopes on some of those. We've had high hopes in the past. Until some of those things are implemented and we truly see what impacts, I remain very cautious with any developments in this area. And I'm very sensitive to the residents that have to travel and traverse through this particular area day in and day out with regards to traffic and just their ability to move around in those areas. In terms of the trip cap thing, that's just odd. I've got no problems supporting to remove that. I mean, I think Chase is right. That's just a kind of a hard thing to even try to wrap your mind around without knowing what the thought was back in 2008. But that's really all I've got particularly.
I might mention that in the discussion with the neighbors about the transportation impacts, we did talk about the idea that these were the other uses that were allowed there now.
Mm-hmm.
So we got them comfortable with, and Sands is the expert, but intuitively, that hotel customers normally come at odd hours. They're not coming at the peak times when the road's clogged up. So this actually, in moving to a use that is, less a peak hour generator, it helps the alleviate traffic. Now, if you don't do anything there, that's the best thing for alleviating traffic. But that's just, this is America, right?
So,
Yes, sir.
yeah, and I guess I'll comment further on that. So, I can appreciate like the check-in part of that. The reality of it is that what we do see in that particular area, and when I saw this project coming forth, I went down particularly and kind of watched this area. What you do see in the area, if you have in a hotel, is that the checkout times are going to be early in the morning, typically. Most of these type of hotels where they're staying along the interstate, these aren't resorts spending 3, 4, 5 nights to enjoy the scenery of I-95. Mm-hmm. These are folks staying the night, passing through. And what we see is they leave relatively early in the morning. This is a huge congested area in the morning, folks trying to get on and off I-95, going to work, and particularly trying to get to the schools along that Taylor Road corridor. So that would, that weighs a lot in my concern. The other thing is, and I mentioned in our meetings, when I look at projects, and a lot of this is just hope, quite honestly, but when you look at these projects, a lot of times I like to look at them and say, is this something residents have been looking for? Have they been asking for? Is it something we hear about? I've never had a resident say, I wish I had more hotels in Port Orange. Not one time, ever. I still haven't had that.
You didn't have that when we didn't have any.
Right. Kate, you're absolutely correct, 100%. Jokingly, I was telling these guys, I said, Taco Bell, different story. You need a lot of Taco Bells and Chick-fil-A's and different things like that. So, restaurants and eateries and specialty shops and different stuff like that we hear a lot about, but the hotel idea is not something I hear residents asking us for or to try to promote or encourage to see more of that. So
it's a good point. And I hear that from chambers of commerce, from
Sure.
business people, begging for good new hotels. You know, all of the jurisdictions that I work in want good, clean hotels.
Sure.
And, you know, one of the things that I was talking about with the neighborhood about that was, you know, other than bringing jobs and tax base and all the things that as business people we know are important, as well as contributing to the fixing of the roads system, you know, big recreational activities, people coming from out of town need a place to stay. You know, family in town that you got a family reunion or a high school class reunion. Hotels are important for the community, and you guys don't have very many. So there's my 2 cents on it, but I didn't take a survey of all your residents, but if you took a survey of your business people, they may think otherwise.
Sure. You take a survey of all the employees that work in them, you'd probably find
sure.
100% approval.
Yeah, for sure.
Matter of perspective. Anything else, Scott?
That's it.
Drew?
Yeah, Rob, I tend to agree with Scott that traffic is always going to be the biggest concern when you have something. But on the other hand, Florida's grown by leaps and bounds. The areas around us are grown by leaps and bounds. More and more travelers are coming to the area, and as they're passing through, there probably, you know, there probably is a need in certain areas, and this being adjacent to the interstate, as Country Inn is in La Quinta, they're all right. You know, the two of them are right there. Traffic is the concern, but in looking at it, actually, too, they're possibly contributing to the, you know, to the solution of some of the problems. And so, you know, with something that may be an annoyance, you get something on the back end and something that could be good. So we just got to look at it closely and see where we're at. But, you know, again, I tend to agree with Scott. Never had anybody say, hey, we need more hotels, but I've never said, hey, I never had anybody say, don't ever build, you know, they don't ask for them, but they don't speak out against them either.
Anything else?
No.
Chase?
Yeah, it's certainly not an easy one. Nothing ever is in this area, obviously, for the obvious reasons that were just mentioned. Ideally, from our own internal standpoint, we would not like to have anything developed, but you know, we're not going to put a moratorium on development. We're not going to be the Bushwood Country Club that says you're not allowed, but you are. But so I don't think people in Port Orange are asking for hotels or not asking. They're not using them. They're asking for Taco Bells because they are using them. They want to go there. So I think the market is going to be the one to determine whether or not we have those in here or not. And the market is the one that should determine whether or not it's going to succeed or fail. It of course is never an easy one when you're dealing with Dunlawton, obviously. I might be the lone supporter of this. It's not without the due diligence. I did have a chance to watch the Planning Commission meeting. I've spoken to each one of the Planning Commission members on it. They all had different reasons. And traffic wasn't always the response as to why it wasn't approved. But I'd also say that if traffic is the concern, then this is the answer to mitigate some of the damage of the impact that can go there. We make zoning changes all the time because we look for lesser impact. And based on the science, if we're going to believe the science in one area, we're going to believe it in the other that says this is a lesser impact for that particular area. So I do have one question, though, probably for Penny, if possible. You know, we've talked about, you know, meeting with the residents. And by the way, I'll point out, I do know residents are not here, but I would think that probably for other reasons. I do know that there are residents that are not in support of this and some that are, but I just wanted to point that out, that and I did get an email from a couple and they wanted to be here. But my question, I guess, would be, you know, if we've made some concessions for the residents, and let's say the owner of the property decides to sell it, he's the owner of the property, not the developer. What would prohibit, or what would keep those promises, if you will, in place that says, all right, we've made these concessions to these people, but now he sold it, so he doesn't have anything to do with it. What happens there? How do you hold the new person
Really, what you
accountable.
see on the plan is required by the land development code. So anybody who would come in, if he were to sell it, would also be required to put in the landscaping and the fencing, subject to POA approval, because that part of the property is owned by the POA. It's the common pond.
So even the stuff that he's not required to do, but he is offering to do, he'll be required to
Mhm.
at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So pretty much what you see here is that's what's required is what's in the MDA in the legal document.
Okay.
Okay.
It runs with the land. The next owner has to do the exact same thing. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. All right. Yeah, and I did have a chance to speak with Tom earlier today, and I appreciated the time, but I understand that this is a contentious one. Anytime you put something near Dunlawton, it's gonna add to the impact here. But in order to do the road improvements, the project has to be there first, correct? To get the funding in order to do that.
Yeah, so the process involves, the tripwire for concurrency review is gonna be site plan in this case. When you come through the site plan, you have to go through full concurrency review. Sands is out there counting cars on the road and doing the actual analysis of what would happen when this hotel gets built. So when it gets built, either there's gonna be money funneled towards an improvement, proportionate share, based on the concurrency, or a road improvement will be done that's commensurate to the amount of the impact. So Sands can go into the details of it, but we do these daily almost in other jurisdictions and here, where a lot of times it's a pipeline improvement, a turn lane that was needed, but it helps everybody. And so your portion of a lot of little portions of a bunch of things that have issues, you go ahead and spend your money on a big bang for your buck for something that helps everybody, and that's typically what ends up happening.
He brought the question up, and Sands is here. Let's hear from him on
Yeah,
it.
Sands, you want to come on up? I'm gonna space myself from him too.
Good evening. Sands Lassiter, Lassiter Transportation Group. Offices are at 1455 West Granada Boulevard, Ormond Beach. So what's the question?
Great.
Well, the question was, the road improvement, in order to make it is massively congested as it is right now. Anything going in there, would be almost catastrophic.
He
He
wants
wants
you to speak to your part of the process in contributing to that.
Well, there is a planned signal retiming effort, which is not just a retiming effort, but installation of hardware and software that will handle Dunlawton to a much more efficient extent. We've also run the preliminary numbers to show what the results of that would be, and that creates enough capacity on Dunlawton to accommodate this project. This project can help fund that. It can help fund other improvements by virtue of its impact fees and pipelining those to whatever improvements need to be made. So that's the answer is.
So when we talk about that infrastructure and even a right turn to get off to Boxford, those projects are funded with projects like this.
That's correct, absolutely correct.
So without these projects, we don't get that funding, we can't make the road improvements.
Unless
I mean, we
money is
can, but
raised some other way.
another way to get money.
Correct,
Raise the
correct.
funds another way. Find other dollars,
Right.
other sources.
Absolutely correct.
All right. I mean, I understand the opposition, but I think, at least in my terms, I think the pros outweigh the cons by even a small margin, but.
I'm sorry, Chase, let me just interrupt. The light signalization project we keep talking about, that's already planned and funded, correct?
That's funded by.
That's the one that's
That's
occurring
That is
this year.
happening this
That's in
year.
the-
Yeah, it
that's
is
correct.
coming.
Right, okay.
That's correct, this
So,
summer.
building a hotel doesn't fund that project, I just want to be clear. Right, understood, but
Right,
we keep
and I didn't
mentioning
think
that,
it
I
was
just
that
want to make sure
project,
that,
yeah.
Well,
that we're
so-
clear on that.
It is
that's-
tied to this when it comes to the capacity of the
I
road.
understand that part, yes.
So-
But it's not funding.
That
project.
particular project, no, but that particular project was funded and future projects will be funded
Understood.
with OPM, right?
Right,
Other people's
understood.
money.
Yeah. And maybe when they're done, Jake, maybe you can speak to that.
Sure.
And give us how
Sure.
much are we talking? Exactly what project we could proceed doing this with? So, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chase, go ahead.
No, that's fine, that's fine. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm good. That's it.
Okay, you're good. While he's up there, anybody else have any questions of Sands? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chase, you got anything else?
I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, Marilyn's turn.
I think my colleagues have very eloquently explained their reasons. I'm in accord with both those that see the downside of this as well as those that see the upside. So what really weighed in my decision is the vacant piece of property is really nice because there's no traffic impact. But the property owner does have a right to do something, and the permitted uses are all things that are going to generate trips. So then when I look at, you know, the vehicle trip cap and then how it got there, as well as what the traffic engineers say and improvements, really I think it does become a way, this piece of property, and changing the designation to remove the trip cap is something that is desirable. And as for, you know, should we include hotel as a accepted use? I must live with a different group of people, because in fact I had a resident say to me they really wished we had more hotel rooms, and what they cited was when they've had family come into town during any particular time that happens to coincide with a spring break or a race week or even a graduation, and they say, you know, try and find a hotel room in Port Orange or even close by at the airport. So I think that was pretty interesting. At the end of the day, I think that the location does make it very close to being a commercial hub, and I think a hotel is not necessarily a bad thing. So
Okay.
that's where I stand.
When you say so, I'm like waiting for.
Yeah, I know.
I was
I
making sure
didn't know
there's
how to
nothing
end
else
it.
there.
Enough's been said.
I didn't want to step on you. Questions I had, and after watching Planning Commission, there were some concerns about the POA there. How is that supposed to work? You got what, 5 properties
what
there?
aspect?
I mean, you got 5 properties contributing to the upkeep of joint property towards the rear of this.
That's the concept as I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's it? Is that in practice now, or what's going on?
Don't know the answer to that. My understanding from hearing the property owners talk amongst themselves at the neighborhood meeting was they have some differences of opinion about how it should be governed, which is a private matter that I think that they're working out, I hope, because I'd like to see that pond be kept up, and then if this guy's gonna build a wall and landscaping and irrigation, somebody's gotta take care of it, and they need to come up with how it's gonna be taken care of. Now, the burden may end up being on Todd ultimately, because he's gonna install those things, but I think it should be shared, so hopefully they're coming up with a solution to that. It's not for the city, you know, council to, I think, necessarily worry about that. It's an existing.
I don't worry about everything.
Yeah, we all do. There are bigger things in front of us right now, Mayor, to worry about, but at the same time, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, because I think it's something that still needs to be settled in the private side.
And I think that that's an important,
Yeah.
that's an important piece of that moving forward. If we approve it, certainly there will be regulatory power on our part to make sure that
Well, the enforcement of maintaining those things, for sure, but the enforcement of the relationships and the agreements between the parties, not so much.
Mhm.
I would say that this happens a lot, in my experience, where there's an association and it goes away. You know, and so what happens? Well, the individuals end up taking care of their pieces of it, because in this case, there'll be a PD and a site plan that say, you're supposed to do this,
Mhm.
build this, take care of this, and he'll have to do it. Like I said, the burden will end up being on him by virtue of his development order saying he's got to do it. So you guys have good code enforcement. They're going to come in and say, those bushes are dying. You better make sure the sprinklers are working. And they're going to say it to him because he's got the development order that says he's got to do it.
Gotcha. Another issue. Where, what is the actual plan? What are you, are we looking at, is there, I know you're gonna question whether this is relevant or not, but I'm curious as to whether the property owner right now has a desire to develop it, or whether he's looking for a great project to market for somebody else who is in the development game.
Well, that's a good question, but it's not really for me. Todd, I don't know whether you want to weigh in. He has said in the past and said at the planning commission, I think at the neighborhood meeting, that it could go either way. I mean, he's talking to some national hoteliers that might come in and take it over, or he's going to build it and let them lease it. You know, that's a business thing he hasn't worked out yet. Yes or no? That's kind of where he is. But again, I think you know, the question about what effect this would have on someone else that came in. Let's say you know, Marriott comes in and does it. They still have to pay, you know, abide by these exact same terms. So they get the same benefits and they also have the same obligations. It runs with the land is the best way to think about those things.
Now, the other thing that, and part of the reason where I'm going with that, council, is that whatever improvement comes out of the ground, the higher the quality and improvement, the higher the level of revenue. And I think it's important, when we look back at Port Orange 30, 40 years ago versus where we were 20 years ago, we were disproportional in homes to businesses. And right now, we still are in that lower quartile of property taxes, which I think is pretty impressive because we've got no beachfront property, and a lot of it has to do, our residents benefit in their tax rates because of our commercial developments. So, and this would be a contributor to that. So, but I don't want to see, I'm not looking for a Motel 6.
I can guarantee you one thing about this one. It'll be new. People aren't building new. They're not building new shabby hotels, Mayor.
Way to go out on a limb on that.
You build something new, it's going to be nicer than, you know, something. Yeah, nicer than old.
And of course, what I want, what the market wants, and that's all yet to be determined. Here's what I want to do to move forward. I still need to hear from the public. After we've heard from the public, I want the city manager to chime in and answer our questions, and then if Rob has anything else to add, then we'll come back to him. But before we hear from people here, I wanted to read into the record Carl Thomas, the hotel owner from Country Inn and Suites, who's also the president of Jersey's End Subdivision, wrote to us, and I want to read into his comments into the record. Due to the CDC government mandate regarding essential travel, my own age of 71, and exposure to recent California, Nevada, and other airline travel, I consider it proper and prudent to cancel my planned appearance at your city council meeting scheduled for this evening. As my role as sole funder and only financial contributing member of the Journey's End Subdivision Property Owners Association, I strenuously object to the proposed rezoning of a non-contributing member of the association. In 2011, when contemplating the purchase of a bankrupt, abandoned 9-acre project containing a partially constructed hotel, the city of Port Orange and Volusia County required a number of actions to allow development. One of the significant actions was to complete the infrastructure and partially contribute assets to Port Orange, not only to serve the hotel, but also adjacent property owners. A rezoning to expand potential hotel use was not contemplated when the investment was made in allowing the implementation of this development. Were it foreseeable that a non-contributing member could potentially adversely affect the economic viability of the project through zoning changes, our substantial investment would not likely have occurred. The improvements, enhancements, and upkeep of the public areas, retention pond, etc., have been entirely funded by myself through the hotel with no contribution from the other members benefiting from the development. To now change zoning because the Journey's End Subdivision POA has created a potentially desirable location at our economic cost will be an unjust transfer of wealth, adversely affecting our employees and our customers. The potential adverse traffic effect would likely damage our hotel business, service to our hotel customers, not to mention our neighborhood, and impact on immediate community. Tom Clapsaddle will and can provide additional comments, and he is here tonight. Statistically, the Daytona region is overbuilt and economically underperforming all other Florida regions reporting hotel hospitality activity. Tom Clapsaddle can also provide more documentation. Changing zoning to hotel use per this application would not just add fuel to the fire. Would just add fuel to that fire. Finally, I hope my non-appearance at the meeting is not perceived as a reflection upon how important this issue is to our employees, customers, and business. And it shouldn't be, absolutely not. It reflects entirely upon how our industry is supposed to react and support mandates of the CDC, federal government, and public safety. during this coronavirus pandemic. Respectfully, Carl Thomas, hotel owner of Country Inn and Suites and president of Journey's End Subdivision POA. And I did want to make sure that was read into the record prior to Tom coming up, because I wanted to make sure that you got your full 3 minutes as to whatever it is you want to say. So we are at that part of the meeting. Tom, did you have anything to add?
Tom Clapsaddle, 5802 Journey's End Way, the general manager of that hotel. To address your comment in regards to finding a hotel room in this area when people are trying to come in, that's true. When you're trying to come in during a special event time frame, you're not going to find a hotel room in this area. However, the Daytona Beach area ran 63.2% occupancy last year. That includes those time frames. So that tells you how bad we do the rest of the year. I mean, we've got the special events, but those special events aren't so special anymore. Bike Week's not what it used to be, and neither is the Daytona 500, and right now we don't know what's going to happen with Coke Zero just by moving it to August, let alone with what's going on right now with the coronavirus. Residents along I-95, and Carl mentioned it, back before we got here, used to talk about the eyesore that was sitting out there on I-95, and Carl Thomas took the time and energy and money and invested in the city of Port Orange. Our hotel associates would have an issue. Somebody said they wouldn't. They would have an issue with a hotel coming in here. You don't need any additional properties in this town. Daytona Beach is overbuilt. New Smyrna Beach is overbuilt. You have a Holiday Inn Express that's coming in across the street eventually. When that's going to be, I don't know, but he's got the right to put it there. I'm going to guess when somebody went through and put this planning together back in the day, that they actually picked the four corners and said, let's put a hotel here, 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 and here, because that's exactly how it would have worked out if somebody would have built one where Advent's going. Instead, there's still a possibility of putting one back there behind Sweet Frogs. You've got that zone for that. Where there's any place else, you ought to zone it down at the river area. Whether or not you can, I don't know. Whether or not you got space, I don't know. But that'd be a great place to put one. Whether the success or failure of this property, if it comes to fruition, will also be the success or failure for the other two that are currently here and the third one that's coming into here right now. Because we're overbuilt. That's all I can say. The area is overbuilt with properties. And I know how we're struggling prior to the coronavirus. The next 8 months are not going to be a fun time. So if somebody decides to develop a hotel, or you decide to allow somebody to develop a hotel here, be prepared to see some of those hotels sitting empty, and be prepared for maybe even some of them not getting done. Any questions? I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm not a happy man right now.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone here else want to speak to the item? Public participation is closed. Jake, you want to?
Real quick, and I'll stand up in case my lapel mic's not working. Jake Johansson, City Manager. One of the things that I want to, it's really not about this project per se, but it's about development in general. Since I've been here, we've done a lot of build and use those impact fees, those fees. Think about what we did for First Watch, which no doubt has impacted Dunlawton, but I don't feel like I feel it. But there are people that have built, and we have collected money from them, and those are the funds that we use to get our projects what we call shovel ready. Councilman Stiltner, you're on the TPO. You know how far ahead of some other cities we are, because we have designed and ready right turn lanes, left turn lanes, things of that nature. Right turn lane at Boxford Road, things like that are on our mind and always being thought of for design, so we can be on the TPO list. So when everybody else says, I don't have that design yet, Tim, Councilman Stiltner and Bobby Ball can say Port Orange is ready. We got 5 projects. And we've been talking about those projects for a couple of years now. So if anything gets built in this vicinity, which something will eventually get built, those funds will be used for those projects. What they are specifically, we don't know, because we don't know what kind of project it is, what kind of money it's going to be, and what our number one priority will be at the time. But there are a lot of projects in that vicinity. So something to think about. We are not being right now proactive with our traffic. We're not fixing traffic and then asking developers to come. We're asking for developers to pay for that traffic. If we don't allow developers to develop, then we're not going to get those traffic problems fixed. Gas tax is dwindling. Our taxes are, we try to keep it down every year. We don't have, and even if we bumped it up a little bit, it wouldn't pay for a traffic problem. So we'll have to rely heavily on that. And that will be something we very, very much need to consider on Williamson moving forward for 2-lane from Summer Trees to Bevel. We are not going to be able to 4-lane that before we develop successfully. So something to think about regardless of what the project is. Additionally, FDOT is starting to talk about improvements with Port Orange, who was proactive and working on improvements at the interchange. Tim went to a meeting today. I haven't been debriefed on that. Tim, do you want to come up and speak to that real quick, Mayor, if you don't mind?
Tim Berman, Community Development. The project was one of the TPO items that we submitted 2 years ago. It was to look at the overall interchange area and the segment of Taylor Road to Williamson Boulevard to see what type of improvements could be made in that area to improve capacity and function for vehicles and also pedestrian safety. We actually had the meeting, phone conference, and there was a number of projects that are being proposed as part of the feasibility study that we could either apply for design and build, or may have to investigate because they're pretty large sweeping changes that could happen in the interchange to improve capacity then. Again, DOT was on the call, and so was Volusia County, and was supportive of all the changes that were being proposed then. So at least we've got other agencies involved with us trying to move forward on there then. So we are looking at, options there, and got the support from other agencies to move forward then. And we'll continue to push those through the TPO for other people's money, or also look at other alternatives such as development helping us with design or possibly construction.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Rob, you want to add or refute? That's a good move. Questions, comments? Scott? Drew?
No, sir.
Chase? Marilyn?
Just 2. One, I understand, well, the Daytona Beach hotel, your occupancy rate is about in the 60s. I think your own hotel is about 75%, 72? Yeah, so it's pretty good.
You run a very good operation.
2 thoughts. One, if we permit or add hotels to the use of accepted businesses that could be in this area, it's not a foregone conclusion that a hotel will go there. Well, the current property owner thinks that. If indeed we are overbuilt, I would assume an investor will do a market analysis to decide is it a good thing to do or not. I think we have to keep that in mind. The second thing I would say, the concerns about what type of project, correct me if I'm wrong, Penny, but at the end of the day, when a developer actually has, more than just a fleshy outline, it comes back to us for approval, correct? And so that, we know the piece of property where when we know some of the covenants, if you will, we still have, no, we won't.
So this is, what comes before you are like concept plans with master development agreements. But if this were to be approved, The site plan would be at the a staff development review committee would review that in-house, because they're not asking for any deviations. They're just going to be, they would be submitting a site plan per code.
Okay.
They've actually designed the site. They did a tree survey and made sure that they designed even the concept plan, if it were to move forward with this type of development, that they designed the concept plan already to meet our land development code standards, preserving over 19 specimen trees. That's why you see kind of the layout that you see is it was specifically laid out in a way to not impact the existing trees on the property. So what you see before you meets the land development code, and there wouldn't be any quasi-judicial decision to be made. It would just be a technical review through the SDRC.
Okay, but what we've talked about today in terms of the buffer between the neighborhood and whatever, that's going to be incorporated
On the staff-
in our action today.
Yes, that's required by code.
Okay. You know.
Okay. I know from my part, in 2011, when I was on council, I was part of that effort in the middle of towards the end of a recession to help revitalize that project. And it was some things that we did with the current hotel owner. There's some concessions we made and how we accepted payment. But at the same time, it was invigorating in the middle of a recession. I think that Port Orange in 2010, we were one of only 2 shopping centers to open anywhere in the nation because of the vibrancy of this community. And then later on, that hotel came along in the middle of a recession. And those were some terrific contributions. And there are some fairness issues that Mr. Thomas mentions, and I get that. So we've got some things to consider. In that regard, are there any final comments, questions, council? There being none, Matt, is there anything you need to add before I call a vote on these items?
Call public comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. With that, on item 20, in regards to, on items 20, it's the trip cap. Call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. On item 21, on the master development agreement, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
No.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
No. 3-2, passes.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Okay. Item 22, ordinance number 2020-7, the individual who was traveling from Ohio could not be here tonight.
So it's changed.
Something about a virus issue in travel. Ohio is pretty bad, and wanted to continue that to April 7th. So I would request a motion to continue this item to April 7th.
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion second to continue the first reading of ordinance number 2020-7 to April 7th. Call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. So that item will be continued to date certain of April 7th. With that, I would like to call a short 7-minute recess so that everybody can go wash their hands.
7
we
minutes to
at
wash
here?
your hands?
So close. 20.
While I was doing the math, 20 seconds each
Jake.
times.
Yes, sir.
What'd you do to the clocks and now that it's
And we are back. Everybody's hands are clean now, right?
Yeah.
Give you a special hand washing break. Item 23 is a special exception for private recreational facility in the floodplain conservation. The recommended motion on item 23 is to move to approve the special exception request. Let me turn my mic on. The recommended motion is to approve the special exception request to allow one private dock as a private recreational facility on a plus or minus 3-acre portion of a spoil island in the Halifax River, subject to all applicable local, regional, state, and other federal permits or easements being obtained before issuance of a city building permit for a dock. May I have such said motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Item is open and on the floor for discussion.
Nope.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Penelope Cruz Planning. Emilio Cicerelli, representing Inland We Trust, property owner, has applied for this special exception request to allow for the private recreation facility on private property zoned floodplain recreation. The area is approximately 3 acres. It's located approximately 1.5 miles south of the Causeway Dunlawton Bridge, and the property's been zoned floodplain conservation since the late 1970s. The special exception request is for the proposed private recreation facility. The request was reviewed in the same manner as past special exception requests with regards to interpretation of what the requirements mean and has met those requirements. According to the applicant, the recreation facility would be in the form of a dock that would be attached to the subject property and extend into the Halifax River. The dock is considered a recreation facility because it would provide the property owner the ability for access to the property for water-based recreation activities. The special exception application, if it's approved, would still have to submit a building permit to permit the dock and also be required to meet all of the city's land development code requirements, Florida Building Code, and all applicable county, state, and federal requirements, such as those from the Army Corps of Engineers, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Volusia County. Typically, the first step is to get the zoning approval before moving on to permitting, and that's what this step is here, is the special exception zoning approval. However, the applicant has already begun his preliminary discussions with some of these federal agencies, specifically the Army Corps of Engineers, regarding what is proposed. The Army Corps staff has also spoke to the Army Corps representative in the area, and they have stated that the proposed location of the dock is outside of the federal channel setbacks, and they don't anticipate any issues with the proposed location. However, they would have to still go through the final review and permitting once the details are designed. And they said it does appear to meet the manatee guidelines for the area. However, in order for the permit to officially be approved, it would be conditioned on the property owner entering into what they call a consent to easement with the Army Corps' Real Estate Division. And what that means is, if you want to think about it similar to a license agreement for somebody who would want to make an improvement in city right-of-way. If you can see the graphic before you, although the darker shaded color is the actual federal channel, their right-of-way actually pretty much expands most of the width of the Halifax River. So that's what that consent to easement would be the actual approval to build in their right-of-way. This special exception is required from the city because the dock would be attached to private property that has city zoning on it. So you can see here on the left side is our future land use map. On the right is our zoning map. The properties had this conservation, future land use, and floodplain conservation zoning, like I said, since the late 70s. I would like to put on the record that residential dwelling units or non-residential development is not allowed on this property. The only permitted use in the FC zoning district is outdoor facilities for civic and public functions. And a public or private recreation facility, such as what is proposed tonight, is a special exception use. With that, staff is recommending approval because it met the criteria of the special exception requirements, and the applicant is here and has representation that would like to speak to their item.
Any questions of Penny before we hear from the applicant? No. Let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Attorney Victoria Zinzin in Gordiano, PA. My offices are located at 412 North Wild Olive Avenue. We're here tonight because my clients, Emilio Cirelli and Inland We Trust LLC, his corporation, which is the owner of the subject property, are seeking to build a dock so that he may access and utilize the land that he's owned for the last 17 years. Mr. Cirelli is now in his 60s. He's looking to enjoy his life. He's looking to social distance in this particular period of time. And so he's looking to erect the dock. There were some concerns with regards to the boating areas and the fact that the dock actually does not extend to the navigable waterways. It extends to the end of the sandbar, which is evidenced by page 4 of the staff report there. It shows the subject property there in blue with the yellow line. I would touch the computer, but I don't know how. So the yellow line there extends to the edge of the sandbar. You'll note that it does not extend out into the navigable waterways of the Halifax River. My client is simply seeking to erect the dock such that he can access the property that he has owned for the last 17 years or so. There actually is no other way to access the property other than by boat, so unfortunately driving there is obviously not an option for him. As Penny so eloquently stated, he has spoken with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He's obtained a Phase 1 environmental report, which has indicated that no mangrove bushes will be disturbed by the erection of this dock. He has also agreed to raise the height of the dock such that kayaks and other watercraft that were smaller that would be able to navigate that sandbar there would be able to go underneath the dock and traverse that sandbar. As larger watercraft actually shouldn't really be that close into shore, especially in low tide. And in addition to that, I guess the Planning Commission had some concerns with regards to his proposed use for the remainder of the land in addition to the dock. And again, the dock is merely being erected for the purpose of tent camping. He can dock his boat so that he can fish off the dock. He's not intending to erect any structures, so that's not an issue at this time. Are there any questions that I can answer?
We'll start with Chase this time.
Let me finish writing this down. Hang on a second.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. How does he get into the island now?
As of now, he has to sort of beach the boat on that sandbar there on the edge, which actually poses a much larger risk. If the boat becomes dislodged from the sand, it drifts out into the navigable waterway, which creates a hazard for the other boaters that are actually traversing that channel.
I guess a question for Penny, but we'll bring her back later on. I can ask her then.
Yep. Okay.
No other questions right now.
Drew? Let's see, along with the pier, there's a proposed 256 square foot platform along with a boathouse. That'd be at the far end of the pier or closer to the land?
Closer off to the side. So if you go to the end of the dock, it will be to the side of the dock such that it will not obstruct any use of that waterway.
A separate structure or connected?
Connected.
Okay, just want to make sure it wasn't going to be a separate one.
Yes.
256 square foot. Okay, that's all I got, thank you.
Okay.
Meryl?
I did receive a comment from the public of an adjacent neighbor that had serious concerns that actually echoed some of mine. I don't think a 250-foot dock with a boathouse is a good idea on a spoil island in the middle of the Halifax River. That's all I have to say.
Scott?
I've got several concerns. Number one is, while the main navigable ICW channel is off to the east of where the end of the dock would be, the waterway around the property is navigable. In fact, I can navigate that on my boat, and I have a 24-foot center console, no problem. Tide specific, yes, but it is navigable. So by building something like that, that's absolutely going to eliminate that because of the structure of the sandbars and the non-ICW channel, because there's a secondary channel that runs around the point of that. My other concern is the length of the dock is such that I think it will provide a real hazard to the waterway. While the main ICW channel is a little farther out, that entire area down through there is navigated differently depending on the types of boats and the sizes of boats and watercrafts and kayaks and paddle boarders and things and such. The other thing is the character of that area. This is a really neat area, and it's relatively untouched. And I think putting a dock of that size out in this area is really going to change that, and not for the good. I get the desire, totally get the desire. I will tell you, I was very surprised when I first saw this to even realize that this was actually a private piece of property, and that such an application could be made. So I totally understand and completely appreciate the desire. I think it's a bad idea. I think there's some safety issues for sure that I would be, as a property owner, I would be very uncomfortable with, because I've seen vessel accidents happen up and down the ICWs in areas where the docks extend really close. So those would be the concerns that I have with it. But I
If you don't
totally
mind, may I
appreciate
address
and
those
understand the
concerns?
desire. So
That's
Sure.
what we're doing right now.
Okay. With regards to your concerns about the waterway and that channel not being noted, or the dock rather not being noted by the boats that are traversing that channel, my client has already agreed that he would install minor solar lighting such that the dock is clearly delineated. He's also looked into the ability of purchasing reflective signs, which will demonstrate to boats that there is both a sandbar that runs directly through and underneath that dock, as well as the fact that the dock does extend to the edge of that sandbar, such that that's clearly marked by both the dock and by lighting, such that again, doesn't disturb the wildlife and everything around it, but that does alert boaters to the fact that there is a structure there.
but what about the navigation portion?
With regards to the navigation portion, my client has, again, with regards to that page 4 of the staff report, my client, the reason he is erecting the dock on that side of the island is such that the other side is still, you can get out and around it and into the navigable channel. You can go, again, from the navigable channel into the smaller channels, but it's not necessarily capping off those smaller channels on the side that run into the Halifax River. So he's attempting to actually curtail some of that by building the dock on the far side rather than across one of the smaller channels there on the edges.
Yeah, and I'll just offer that I'm not sure how old these satellite image photos are that are being utilized, but the access to that channel to go, you have to go farther south first of all, and you have to parallel the bank line of that property and come back to the northwest, relatively close to the island itself. And then there's a small channel area, not much wider than the width of a single vessel, that allows you to navigate all the way up around the point of that property and even to the back side and back farther to the south again. And so looking at these diagrams and these pictures, when you build a dock like that, you're going to cease the ability for a vessel to navigate that area.
If I may address that? Yeah. State your name for the record.
My name is Emilio Sorelli. I've owned the property for 17 years. I've visited that island at least 3-4 times a year. And right now I have I live about 2 miles away from there. I've purchased a home on the Halifax River, and my boat is on a dock that I can get to it within 3-4 minutes. Well, maybe 10 minutes, because there's no wake zone until you pass the bridge. There's a certain area that you mentioned where there's a little portion, depending on the tide.
Mm-hmm.
If it's low tide, no one can get in there. Absolutely no one. I've got stuck there so many times. But on a high tide, you're right, there is a portion. And in that portion, the dock would be elevated, as I spoke with the Army Corps of Engineer, 7 foot above sea level, to allow those small kayaks and small little boats to get through there. And
Right, but you're completely eliminating the ability of somebody with a small center console that's got a T-top or something to be able to navigate up and around that area as they
they
can.
can't get in there.
They absolutely can.
No, only on the high tide, sir, because I've gotten stuck there. If you're there more than 3 or 4 hours, you can't get out. I'm saving somebody's, somebody from
We'll
getting
just have
stuck
to
there.
disagree on that
Okay.
because I'm extremely familiar with the property.
Have you
and the
camped on
waterway.
my island?
No, sir.
Because
But I have
there
fished
is-
quite a way, all the way around this. In
Yeah.
fact, on the backside, as you know,
There's people
it's
camping
considerably.
there all the time.
Okay. My concern is not the island, it's the navigable areas around the island and how that would be restricted, so.
And the remedy would be to raise it 7 feet, as I spoke with the Army Corps of Engineer, and
Okay.
they're in agreement to let, to keep that open.
Okay.
Chase, you had a follow-up?
One follow-up question, and maybe even Scott can address this as being a voter, because I'm not familiar with this at all. No, I am with the project, and I also watched this presentation on the planning commission as well. Is there any other option besides a 250-foot dock that would allow for the gentleman to be able to dock his boat up there? Is there any small structure up near the island that it would tie to? Forgive the ignorance of the question, because I'm just not familiar with boating.
I'm not sure if you're asking if the dock has to be that long necessarily, or if you're asking if we can erect a different structure that's not a dock. I'm a little bit unclear, I apologize.
Yeah, I understand the gentleman's request, and I want him to be able to access his island. I'm wondering is a 250-foot dock the only option that we have?
Well, unfortunately, due to the zoning, it's actually probably more detrimental to erect a structure attached to the actual property. And as Penny pointed out to us, you're not able to do that. So the dock is one of the few options. He is flexible with regards to the length. However, the length extending to that very edge of the sandbar seemed like the best option. As it will be lit up, it will indicate that is a sandbar. I can see perhaps a shorter dock. However, that would probably bisect the sandbar, which would create more confusion for boaters. They would think they could go up to the edge of the dock, the edge of the end of the dock through the navigable waterways, when in fact they may not be able to at lower tides. But my client is open to shortening the length of the dock or changing the angle of the dock such that it may be more amenable to boaters such as Councilman Stiltner.
I think I'll have another question for Penny in a minute if.
Any other follow-up questions before we go to the public? Before we go to public comment on this, we did have a email that arrived this afternoon. Hold up, I want to read it into the record.
And Mayor, while you're pulling that up, we do have a relative of that person here who cannot read that, so we're still going to ask you.
I'm going to read this first.
Yes, sir.
First and foremost. My name is Susan Law Bostwick. The Law family owns over 50 acres. Once you have a seat, we'll come back to you. The Law family owns over 50 acres to the south, to the west, and is adjacent to this island, whose owner is requesting permission to build a 250 dock and a boathouse, 250-foot dock and a boathouse. We're concerned about this proposed boathouse and dock will block boat traffic, boats, kayaks, and sailboats, and it will block our western access to our property from the Halifax River. In rough weather, a dock, even though it is 10 feet high in the exiting small channel, will create a dangerous situation for the boaters. We are also concerned that it may change the sandbar configuration on the east side with the Halifax River of our property and will cause erosion to our property and the state-owned surrounding mangrove islands. We are also concerned that a dock near the main channel of the Halifax River will confuse boaters at night and in bad weather with the marker at Fozzard Creek. This marker was installed to show boaters where there is a large sandbar to the north of it and also show the entrance to Fozzard Creek, which is a deep channel. The installation of pilings in the waterway in front of this island may also create a reconfiguration of that entrance to Fozzard Creek so that property owners will not be able to use Fozzard Creek to access their property. The reason that Fozzard Creek is a deep channel is because our father, Lewis Law, a local attorney, dredged it in 1950. We would request that you deny this special exception for a dock and for a boathouse. Susan Law Bostwick, Linda Law Bell, and Mary Law, 5380 Riverside Drive, Port Orange. And that was just to bring people up to speed who may be watching on POG TV at home. Because of the nature of us meeting and the times that it is, I will be reading emails into the record of people who send those in who do not feel comfortable sitting in the audience right now because of the virus outbreak. So at the end, as we progress through this, if anybody sends emails to the city clerk or to myself, when we go to public comment on items, I will read those emails first, so you do have the opportunity to be heard by the council and those present. So moving forward, that's what we will be doing, and that's why. With that, that's read into the record. Would anyone here care to speak to the item?
I am Susan Law Bostwick. I have neither the eloquence or the knowledge that the Planning and Zoning Committee had. But there was not a single yay among them as to this project. Now, I am not the tomboy my sister was, so I never got on a boat and went out there. But I think this is Boy Scout Island, if I understand this. And somehow the Boy Scouts were able to go out there and camp. Now, why a dock is needed to get to it, I understand that apparently at low tide, it is difficult for him to get there. But and it concerns me, the construction of it, because even if it did no harm once constructed, it certainly would upset everything in the construction of it. I mean, you got to put pilings down and all that. Again, what do I know? But I know that much. Those are my main concerns, and it just seems like somebody would run into it. I mean, solar lighting being what it is on a cloudy day, how lit up is it going to remain at night from not being exposed to the sun in the daytime? And there's no electric out there. You couldn't put a generator. Solar is probably the only thing you could do, and it doesn't seem like a good remedy for it.
Thank you. Anyone else here care to speak to the item? Public comments are closed. Coming back to council. Would you care to refute anything or add to anything?
Yes, it's my understanding that Fozzard Creek is actually significantly farther south than the subject property, and that it won't actually pose a hazard to that. With regards to the solar lighting being affected by clouds, that actually is no longer very much of a concern, as solar has made bounds and leaps in terms of how it is able to keep itself lit for multiple days at a time. That's a very minimal concern. In addition, as I've already stated, my client has already looked into the possibility of purchasing reflective signs in the event that for one reason or another the solar fails. The reflective signs will clearly delineate where the dock lies, where the sandbar lies, and the height of the dock, such that small kayaks and whatnot know that they can pass underneath the dock without problem. Are there any further questions I can address?
Council?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. That's it. Penny, go ahead. Chase, I know, has a follow-up question, and then I do, if nobody else does.
Yeah, here's where I'm confused a little bit, because, I understand both sides, and I was inclined to support it, because the idea that there's going to be other entities that are going to be looking at this much more in depth than we are, and at any point in that process they can decline it. Correct? However, when we talk about there's no boating that's going to be impacted by this, am I correct in understanding that the Army Corps said it doesn't bother any boaters? At least in the federal
I mean, they haven't
pathway.
done their official review yet. They said that they will not permit something that does affect boaters. So they would be reviewing it in a manner, it might have to adjust its location, its angle, what have you, if they feel like when they're actually reviewing the actual engineered design plans for the dock, if they feel like it does. At this point, they were saying that they don't anticipate that it will, but again, they haven't reviewed an official engineered permit.
Well, that's not a federal pathway anyway, where it extends to. Will they also be looking in that area as well?
That whole area, if I could pull that up again real quick, it just makes it a little bit easier to, because once I saw this graphic, it made a lot more sense for me as well. So this whole area, that whole width is their right of way. So they have jurisdiction over that entire.
Point to that again.
The entire colored area from this point all the way across to here.
Okay.
That's their entire, that orange color, that's their entire federal right of way. So they have the right to comment and review any of that. And that's why even as they're reviewing if this were to get approved and the applicant were able to officially make application with their engineered plans for a dock, if they got to the point where the Army Corps and the other agencies were able to approve it, it would be conditioned on getting that covenant of easement. And then it would have to go to that other branch of the Corps that basically, it's like that part we were talking about it being kind of like a license agreement. It has to go to their real estate division that basically would give that easement for them to be able to build in their right of way. If they don't get that, then that permit approval goes away too. So there's multiple steps that they would still have to go through. They would also have to follow City of Port Orange regulations with regards, and we haven't looked at any of that because we don't have any design plans yet, as far as, the construction of it.
Do we have anything else like this around here?
No, sir. After speaking to the Army Corps, the closest thing that they could think of was, and you're going to kill me on this one, so I can't remember the guy's name. There's was it the Mets? Davy Johnson, I guess, owns an island in the guy at the Army Corps was really upset that I didn't know who this person was. I'm sorry, I'm not a baseball fan. So I'm sorry, I apologize. So I guess he owns an island in New Smyrna Beach, and this Army Corps staffer, actually, when he was in the private sector, helped permit a dock for one of his islands in New Smyrna Beach. So that's the closest one he's aware of in this area. But in Port Orange, no, we don't have anything like this. And all of the islands in the Halifax have similar zoning and all these same regulations.
Is there any liability for the city if an accident were to happen? Because we permitted a special exception for that.
Our recommendation, I would defer to the attorney's
I think-
office.
I was
Our
gonna say, let's
recommendation
hear from
is
Matt on that one.
subject to getting the required review and permitting from the other agencies. It's their right of way,
Gotcha.
but I would defer to the attorney's office on that.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thanks, Penny.
Okay.
Anybody else have something for Penny?
Did you guys read the planning and zoning review? Did y'all read their comments?
Yes. I did.
Because you asked a question, was there anything else like this? That's what made me wonder. And then she said the same thing, Johnson's.
Yeah.
But that made me, so
So
that's the first step. You go through those guys and then then we have this meeting. But you must have reviewed what they said.
I did. Sometimes I like to ask.
I just don't remember his name. He all but.
Sometimes I like to ask a question that's been asked in the
Well,
past.
that's good, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Penny, I'm not done with you. First of all, you have homework. You have to go look up 1987
I
World
did.
Series.
Oh, I didn't look that up. I did look up who Davy Johnson was, though, after I was-
87 World
Still
Series.
forgot his name.
Yes, I did. It's just not something that's. I got limited space to store information here.
And she's got all those accolades
I've
from
got
earlier
multiple.
still in
I have
her
multiple
brain.
items on your agenda to
There's
remember.
there's a certain first baseman for the Red Sox that year that used to be a Cub. His name's Billy Buck. Billy Buckner.
Okay.
Bill Buckner.
I'm sure my husband
who
will
is
know
a
he's a Cubbies
favorite
fan.
of Met fans because of what happened in that World Series.
Okay.
Go look it up.
will.
87 World Series. Here's your homework.
Okay.
Question I had for you is, if this was a shore-based dock
Yes, sir.
on Riverside Drive or Halifax Drive, where a dock may be allowed, how far would it be allowed to be built out into the river if it was shore-based?
I believe it cannot go more, I don't have the exact answer. I believe it can't go more than 50% out of the navigable area, but I don't have that off the top of my head because I don't do dock permitting on a daily basis.
I'm just curious as how to that would compare to something that's shore-based. Because I don't
It wouldn't
recall
be
seeing
this,
anything of
no,
that
it
length.
wouldn't be this long. And again, the way the staff report recommendation is written is we are not getting into the length or anything like that because we have not seen a design. The dimensions that were written in here were based on what the applicant has suggested he will likely need to avoid the sandbar. But all that will come out of any potential permitting if this step were to be approved. At this point, we're just looking at it from a zoning standpoint as far as a special exception use. So that's why we didn't want to make it subject to any particular length because that's going to be up to the Army Corps.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay. Final questions, comments, council? Marilyn?
The thought that occurs to me, it's a federal right-of-way, and this strikes me as being akin to a private property owner wanting to build something in the middle of a state or federal park. And I just don't cotton to the idea, aside from, you know, whatever hazard it may or may not pose. I think it's a federal, that they control that area, and I am unwilling to approve something from a city perspective in an area that's already designated federal.
Chase?
I'm good. Thanks.
Drew? Nothing further. Scott?
Just to comment to Chase's question, there is nothing like this anywhere in our jurisdictional bounds. When you navigate south of the Dunlawton Bridge, all the way down well until you get to New Smyrna. Actually, I think New Smyrna's utility property, which is almost literally at the inlet, is the first place on that navigable main channel that there would be a dock on anywhere along on the west side bank of the ICW. So it would definitely be something that would be very uncharacteristic and unusual. And again, just to my general comment, I totally appreciate the desire of the property owner to want to do something like this. I just think this is a really bad idea.
And just to follow on that, and I asked a question, I knew it was asked during the planning commission meeting, but it wasn't asked here, and I thought it was an interesting question. And we have different viewers that watch different things, so I thought it'd be appropriate to
Gets
hear
it on
that.
the record. Final comments? Anything else? With that, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
No.
Councilmember Tremont.
No.
Councilmember Stiltner.
No.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
No.
Mayor Burnett.
No. 0-5. Motion fails. Item 24 we did earlier. That concludes the public hearing portion of our meeting. That brings us to the regular agenda. If I can get to that. Item 25. Item 25 is an authorization to submit the proposed project list to the River to Sea TPO for 2020. Transportation Improvement Program priority list. There's 4 new projects on the list, and Tim's going to tell us all about it as soon as I get an motion.
So moved.
Second. Everybody, y'all hands are washed, right? We're ready to roll, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a proper motion, second, to approve to authorize the submission of the proposed project list. And a second is on the floor for discussion. Mr. Berman, you want to tell us about these 4 items?
Yes, Tim Berman, Community Development. That is something we do every March as we get ready to submit projects to the TPO for consideration. These are all feasibility study requests. There is 4 in this case. The first one is the widening of Madeline Avenue between Clyde Morris and Nova Road. Similar to what we recently did, Public Works did on Little Run Boulevard, is to widen that roadway there, make it a little bit safer. If you go down there or drive there, you can see the ruts on the side of the road, kind of abrupt ending then. This is to give a little bit more shoulder, make it a little bit more safer roadway. We've looked into it. We still can make this improvement while also maintaining the proposed sidewalk network project that we've got going on there then. So we're applying for that one here. Next is the accessible pedestrian signals. TPO did a study back in 2017 that identified specific areas within Volusia County that these were required. 3 locations in Port Orange came up in that study. Those were along the Nova Dunlawton area, mainly by the hospital area. We've also reached out to a few residents that have voiced concerns regarding these signals needed in other areas of the city of Port Orange at different meetings this past year. Contacted I think Mr. Roberts, and basically he provided locations where these were needed. So we're including those in this request, the package deal. So we can get those all bundled up and hopefully get one application, one project moving forward on those then. Next is sidewalk and wayfinding signage in the Down Under area. This includes the Down Under area specifically for wayfinding signage to help motorists and protect the people that are walking in the area. It also is a look at the sidewalk network on the outside of that. Basically on the other side of the, I don't know what the condo tower is on the beach side over there, but it's in the city of Port Orange. There's no sidewalk on that area. It's basically be to the south of the Dunlawton area, or the Down Under area. That's to allow residents to walk into that area. And while they're not Port Orange residents, the area to the east there's a large number of residential units there, I believe in Volusia County and or Daytona Beach Shores. This would also provide them access to come to our Down Under area, which we're trying to improve accessibility and business in that area then. We'd also want to look at the what sidewalks can be improved. It's a very tight area over by the DeMucci Tower, or DeMucci building. That area I know is very tight, but the feasibility studies to look at options there. It may involve shifting of roadways, but to see if you get a sidewalk in there to help tie that residential area into the Down Under. Again, the feasibility study is our option to look at these options. They may come back with some of them are feasible, some are not, and this is the opportunity for us to explore those, and we come back with a more finalized project later on then. And the last one is the southbound Yorktown Boulevard right turn lane. There are pedestrian improvements at intersection. It backs up quite a bit while people are trying to make right or go straight through. This would be an add additional turn lane to help move traffic along in that area then. And this one could be a project too. Comes feasibility study. As one of these development projects comes along, could be one that we go from feasibility study to turn over to the developer to build for us then. This gives us a kind of a blueprint moving forward then. So those are the 4 that we're going to submit for feasibility studies. We also will be submitting for design and construction funds the turn lanes on Clyde Morris Boulevard. There will be 4 of those that you approved last year, and also 2 of the Dunlawton Avenue left turn lane extensions. We completed the feasibility studies for those 2 recently then, so we'll be submitting those for design along with these then. If there's any questions, be happy to answer.
I appreciate you also adding the detail of the other 20 projects that are currently on the list. So appreciate that. Thanks, Tim. Questions? 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 Questions?
I had 2.
I know that look.
Yeah, actually it may be more of a comment because I had asked the manager. I was surprised on the accessible pedestrian signals. I did not see South Nova and Miles Drive down near Ridgewood, Riverwood Plaza, because that was a hot button issue. I heard from citizens quite concerned about it. They said the bus stop is on the east side of the road where they're let off, but actually the development's on the west side. And the managers had said that I guess that South Nova and Miles Drive didn't rate high enough for funding.
I think, well, first of all, in terms of the pedestrian accessibility in the area, we'll add that intersection to our applications. The applications don't get submitted at the end of March.
Okay.
So we got plenty of time to adjust that and move forward there. I believe the traffic signal was one that was basically looked to for DOT in terms of was not warranted in terms of the volumes there. But we definitely can add that intersection there to make better improvements as part of this package then, in terms of pedestrian then. So we'll add that to the list then.
The residents there reached out to me, maybe some other council people, and they had a demonstration there about somebody getting hit around there who had some vision impaired issues, so that I was looking for. And then my general question is, I think it's Reed Canal where there's apartments going in, down from the Dunkin' Donuts
Yes.
sign. My recollection is there's not much sidewalk on the south side of that area. Is that something we're expecting the developer will put in?
There's two apartment complexes. There's one in Newport, which is based in that general area. They are required as part of their site plan to extend that sidewalk. And they will
Okay.
be making that connection there along Reed Canal. And I believe they're also extending the sidewalk on the backside too along Rifle Drive in. So they'll be putting the sidewalk pedestrian improvements in there.
And will that go all the way down to Atlantic, the high school?
I'm gonna let Penny
Because I
work
think
the site plan so
that's a
she can
pretty
get-
big, I was surprised not to see that also someplace, because that's sort of, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's a pretty
The
big area.
Newport Apartments they'll be building the sidewalk along their property. It'll stop right before the Atlantic High
Okay.
School boundary. I'm trying to think if there's anything when you cross the street that it then connects over into into our ball fields. But they'll be building their portion there. They'll also be building their portion on Reed Canal, and then also the other apartments. Now it's called Eden. It used to be called Lazule. They'll be building along their entire frontage as well and connecting into the existing sidewalk system, so there won't be any more gap on the north side.
Okay, and will that take it all the way then to Nova Road? The
Yes,
sidewalk?
there's not on Reed Canal. There won't be a gap. The entire.
There
Well,
won't-
no, I'm sorry. There's a portion where there's these little sliver lots
Mhm.
right after you get to this. There's a dentist office
Right.
and things. There's a portion there, but we are in talks right now with the owner of that property to get that sidewalk built sooner than later.
Okay.
So
good.
so hopefully before the end of the year next year, that entire stretch will be connected.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else? Anyone here care to speak to the item? Back to us. Final comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Fremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, I vote. Item 26 is approval of task authorization number 16 for consumptive use permit services with Kimley Horn and Associates. May I have a motion for approval? So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and proper second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. You've been waiting.
I have.
And
I
now
have.
you're
Good
here.
evening. Lynn Stevens, Director of Public Works and Utilities. The item before you today is for a task authorization for Kimley Horn to assist us with applying for renewal of our consumptive use permit. As many people know, consumptive use permits are required and issued by St. John's Water Management District. They're required to withdraw groundwater in order to run a water treatment facility. The permit that we had prior was a 20-year permit, was issued in 2002. So our plan is to apply for another 20-year permit. As part of the permitting process, since it has been 20 years since the city has performed this task, there's a lot of groundwater modeling, a lot of background work that has to be accomplished in order to provide that information to the district so we're successful with a 20-year permit. The permit process generally will take 12 to 24 months, so we are well ahead of schedule so that we're not behind the 8 ball, if you will, to get the permit completed. Just a couple of interesting information about our current CUP. Again, it was one of the first 20-year permits issued in the state of Florida, so that kudos to the city for getting that first 20-year permit. It actually allows in 2019 and beyond a total of 3.274 billion gallons of water a day to be withdrawn, which equates to about 8.97 million gallons of water per day, to which currently we are using about 7.45 million gallons per day on an annual average in 2019. So Part of what goes into this permitting process is the engineer has to look at population expectations over the next 20 years, looks at how much water we expect to use based on growth. So all of that will be part of this permitting process, which is why it takes so long.
Those numbers just for our city or our city plus everywhere else we supply?
Our service area.
Okay.
So it does include all the other areas we supply.
Gotcha.
Good question. Anything else, Scott? Drew? No, I don't have anything. Chase?
Nope.
Marilyn?
Nope.
Anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us. Final comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. We all like water tonight. Brings us to the city attorney.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you,
Well
Matt.
done. Well done.
Good job.
Because we know the city manager's got some things.
Yes, sir. Couple items tonight. You talked briefly during council comments about contracts, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. Number one, that I'm going to approve the Pittman contract for a year. He's still going to try to come down here and do like a legislative wrap-up and a thank you for the extension if I do that. Secondly, and I can have a follow-on conversation, but the statement was made that maybe we need to look at reviewing more of these contracts. I don't know what these contracts are, but Matt and I have talked about particularly the lobbyist contract, and Councilmember Ford and I had a conversation about about contracts that are political, if you will. And this lobbyist is probably the one that keeps on coming to mind for me. I've brought it to your attention every year. I've extended it because I felt, boy, do I feel safe just extending this contract. Last year I did it, I let you know, but I kind of got a feeling from all of you how you felt about the Pittman Law Firm before I extended it. But this might be something that we tweak the ordinance and give it back to council to decide from a lobbyist perspective. He works for the whole city, but he works for you all. And I'm just kind of a liaison to make sure that he does what you all guide me to do. As far as other contracts, you all through the years have loosened the reins to allow our city to execute contracts on my command for certain items. I hope not abuse that privilege, and we have got a few software and hardware things to include people, Jim Tillman in the purchasing department, who do a great job at making sure, even with piggyback and low-cost items, that you're getting the most bang for your buck. So if you want to put some of that onus back on the elected officials and away from me to make those calls, then we probably need to get together and have a workshop with Matt if that's the intent. I don't know if that's the intent, but if that's the intent, let us know.
Well, let's take those
Sure.
one by one. One, I think when we're looking at Mr. Pittman, you know, there is a political aspect to that. So yeah, we're measuring effectiveness.
Yeah.
So that is kind of a little bit different from what are we getting and what are we paying.
I concur.
But I think that it kind of goes to the heart of, if I'm reading the sentiment of council, we want to make sure that our contracts are getting proper vetting, so we are getting bang for our buck. That doesn't necessarily mean that they all come to us, but we want to know that are we bidding them properly, and we as stewards of the taxpayers' dollar want to make sure that when appropriate that we're going through the process. You know, like I said, not all contracts come to us because of size and amount and scope,
But all the same, I think that that is a general comment about us being stewards of the taxpayer's dollar, not just for what we're spending, but from the efficiency standpoint. And that's, if I'm picking up on everybody else's meaning correctly, and everybody up here tell me if I'm wrong or if there's something to add.
No, I don't have an issue with it. I would, if I'm speaking just to Pittman, or if we have another contract that we know is solid, I'm not really interested in using staff's time to read through a bunch of different things if I feel that I already have the best. So I just, just a thought going forward.
So we report, in the weekly, we report all the contracts that we do at least quarterly. So you see the piggyback contracts, you see all the big contracts that I sign from your authority above $25,000 that you've given me the authority to do. Just provide guidance if you want to relook at that authority and take back some of it. Otherwise, we'll tweak the ordinance, and Matt and I will talk, and I'll talk with you all individually if there's other contracts of a nature that you think you want to bring back into the council. But right now, we'll stick with Pittman. I'll extend it for a year, and we'll get it to be your decision next year and go out for bid.
Okay. What else you got?
I'm sorry, Mick, can I just chime in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to make sure that, at least from my perspective, my opinion is that you're right. I think we've loosened some reins. That's worked out in our best interest. My concern is that with contracts, a lot of times the effectiveness of the contract for our city is about the relationships that we build with the city staff and the folks that are providing those services, and many times with the council themselves. Okay. Pittman's Law Group is fabulous. I have nothing but respect for what they do. Having seen it firsthand, they're top notch. My concern is that I just want to make sure that in the interest of the residents that we're supposed to be serving, that we are having a mechanism in place to always evaluate that. Because what I've seen with this particular, just using this as an example, I don't know what else I have to measure Pittman against, right?
Right.
I don't know. Certainly, I'm sure there's other groups out there that do what he does as well. Some may exceed and some may not do as good. But if I'm not evaluating that, if we're not exploring those options in those markets, I don't know. Yeah. And what I just want to make sure is that it seems to me like it is possible with contracts and these relationships for us to fall into a sense of complacent comfort. I don't want to see us do that, because then we're not necessarily always maybe getting the biggest bang for the buck. And that's just my concern, and really not specific to this contract. I can't reiterate that enough. Just a process, because you know what, we got a great thing going right now. I feel great about our elected board. I feel good about our city staff. I feel good about a lot of our contractors. But we still have to be somewhat cautious with that. And we want to make sure that we are taking those steps. And what I always hope is that contractors that we're having success with and a great relationship, I hope they'll appreciate the fact that we want to explore those markets and put them back in that competitive environment and have them always competing for us. That's what I want. I don't want to, I don't want it the other way around. I want them competing for us because they want to be part of the city. So that's just my.
And maybe we haven't done a good job of sharing some of the efficiencies with you, but we now look at piggybacks, and it would be easy just to sign a piggyback, but we make sure it's still competitive. Yeah. A piggyback from 2015 might not be competitive. Although a piggyback from 2015, 9 months ago, I'd be like, jump on that.
And those are great points, Jake, because you brought those to light to us several times in the last few years, where you have found at piggyback and a contract and an example where, man, this is a great thing.
It's a good thing. Sometimes it's not.
It's been expeditious
we're not.
And so forth,
rest assured now, and I let the department heads know. I don't want my signature of a contract to be any easier. The only thing you're not getting is you don't have to stand up in this podium and explain to 5 people you're explaining to me why we're renewing or why we're piggybacking. And Jim Tillman and the purchasing folks say, yeah, we looked at some comparables anyhow, and those things are still valid numbers. And you've seen other things we've done, the leasing of the Harleys versus the buying of it, and stuff like that. So we're always trying to tweak. Maybe we just need to share what we're doing a little bit more often with you, other than what contracts we've let. And what we're finding out now, which we've always known, sometimes we go with the lowest and most responsive bidder, and that wasn't the best thing for the city. Unfortunately, we find that out late.
Mm-hmm.
So we continue to lick our wounds and learn from our mistakes, and try to do the right thing next time. So I appreciate the guidance on that. The River District Workshop, I think that's a great idea to see where we are and where we want to go. But I got to tell you, at some point, we're going to have to make that leadership decision and go.
I agree.
And this isn't, I say this often, this isn't a threat. We may have passed over our opportunity. We'll see how this latest thing here, the coronavirus, happens. So we may find ourselves in another 2008 in 18 months. I'm hoping not.
Yeah, and if that's just my thought on that, Jake, if that happens,
so be it.
Yeah, so be it.
Right.
But my point to my earlier comments is that we probably should have had that discussion earlier. And into that also, what I want to know is, what are we doing to market the property? What's the city? What are we doing to say, hey, we've improved our strategic position. We're seeing growth. We're seeing interest. What are we doing to market what we're looking for in our vision specifically? What are we doing?
As of right now, I have no idea what your vision is.
Right. Well,
I knew that it was mixed use, and we marketed for mixed use, and
How?
nobody bid.
Like how? Like specifically, how are we doing that?
By talking to developers that do mixed use in the area to say, put me in touch with people.
Right.
2 trips to Atlanta, couple of trips up to Tallahassee to talk to developers. By the way, one of the Atlanta guys ended up in jail. So hey,
Good, we passed on that one, so
we
it
didn't
worked.
use them.
So.
We didn't use them. So, but
let's don't get too deep into the weeds tonight.
But
we
so-
need to do this, and as a council, we need to say, hey, listen, let's update the vision, and then if we really want to see happen, I think we have to really look at, okay, how do we market to what that vision is?
So if you
And
really
let's
want
do
to,
it.
if you don't want to get something in the ground that's providing a little tax relief to our money sump called Town Center CRA, then my suggestion, and it's been that for a little while, I know Tim's going to kill me, but if that's the way we want to go, you do an invitation to negotiate, and you see what the heck people throw at the wall and see what'll stick. But I just, that's probably the best bet to make it happen quick. But last time I brought it up, that was not what the vision was. So you all can take that and kind of think about what your vision is, and we'll have a quick workshop, well, not a quick, but soon, and get that moving. Tomorrow I'll be signing, Matt doesn't know this yet, but tomorrow I'll be signing Executive Order number 4, which will cancel recreational sports through April. Susan Lavallo mentions to me that may be a bridge burnt at that point, rec sports through the spring. Baseball might be too hard to pick up. We're not allowing practices anymore. It's just not safe to do and protect our citizens. So we are canceling all rec sports, and we're not renting out the pavilions anymore at Riverwalk Park because if you have 4 pavilions with 20 people in it, it's too many people in the proximity and kind of doesn't fall into the recommendation of the governor. So the park's going to be open but you can't rent a pavilion for a party.
Jake, we spoke earlier today. Can you can you rehash that discussion on the use of a ball field? So a father and son want to come up and use our ball fields.
I can't speak to that right now. I will find out the answer to that.
Okay.
For the most part, our ball fields are locked.
Right.
Our ball fields are for sports. So I'll have to find out what the standard is for that and whether we want to amend that. Because now that we lock the ball fields, so people that schedule them for their practices will have them. If we're not having those practices, maybe it's time to open them up for small events or small practices. The problem with that is once I unlock that door, we're having a pickup game and there's 30 people there and I can't have that.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about them like working on the fields and giving them the break that they
Well,
never get.
that's true. So, and last but not least, I didn't pay anybody that came tonight, but my hat's off to community development. As you recall, about 6 or 7 years ago, community development was not the place that developers said they had a great experience with. So Penny and Tim do a great job up there with the rest of the team. And I couldn't be happier with the comments today, Tim. Congratulations. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jake. Council committee reports. During our meeting, the Florida Department of Emergency Management had a teleconference going on, and I asked Alan Rosen, who was listening to that, if there was anything of interest to share. Alan, did you have anything? Briefly?
Briefly?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Alan Rosen, Assistant City Manager. There were a couple items of particular interest, I think, for us. The people on the call, basically with all the cities and counties of the state, people giving information were the State Surgeon General, Mary Mayhew, Secretary of the Agency for Health and Healthcare Administration for Florida, and Jared Moskowitz of FDEM. The basics that I just want to provide to you, not the whole thing, because we don't need the whole thing, but one of the reasons they are kind of locking stuff down and kind of trying to limit interactions is what the State Surgeon General feels the best way to avoid contracting COVID-19 is to avoid crowds. So that's kind of the reason for what they're doing. And they also said that any doctor in the state should be able to order a test if it's warranted. And that right now there are more than 20 commercial labs around the state that are set up to test in addition to the state labs. So they're ramping up that ability to do that. The Agency for Healthcare Administration talked a lot about ALFs and long-term care facilities, which we have some in our community, so I thought that was important. Hopefully some of them are listening to this. They want to their goal is to aggressively support and protect the elderly because obviously they are the most at risk with this disease. They've greatly restricted visitations to long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities, nursing homes. They're working with those providers to provide them guidance about what to do, what not to do. What they wanted to let people know is if a facility suspects that one of its residents has coronavirus, obviously if they need to go to the hospital, get them to the hospital, but they should call the county health department. And the administration is working with the county health departments to make sure that they're deploying nurses, epidemiologists, and others to support the ALFs and long-term care facilities to make sure that the individual is transported if need be, if not, that person is isolated, cared for, tested, that everybody's wearing the PPE, the protective equipment that they need to wear, and providing guidance and support to that facility. They're also working closely with the hospitals to make sure that they're communicating with these facilities. The one thing they don't want to happen is somebody be sent to a hospital and present the symptoms and not be tested. They said, above all, that person should be tested. They do not want that person to be sent back to the long-term care facility or assisted living facility with COVID-19 and at risk of affecting everybody else there. They're also trying to work and providing recommendations on communications between families and people in these facilities because they're locking them down and providing them information on, maybe using FaceTime, social media, other aspects, other ways of communicating with their loved ones if they can't come into the facility. Jared Moskowitz, the director of FDEM, talked about requests he's made to the federal government for support for items, including masks, ventilators, beds, personal protective equipment, They're setting up right now between 2 and 4 field hospitals across the state in the villages in Broward County. They're getting one together in Orlando and somewhere else he didn't mention. And some of these things are asking up to millions of some of these things, not just, 10, 20, 30, but millions of these things. And he said that they're working on pushing resources out 24 hours a day. They're prioritizing hospitals, ALFs, first responders, et cetera, so, including PPEs. So if we as a city or other cities have a need, as with any emergency, we push those requests up through the county and they push them up to the state. And hopefully they have enough to push down our way. So we should be doing that if we need to. And those are the biggest things I got from the call.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you sharing. First Step Shelter, Chase?
No new updates this time. We have a meeting tomorrow. It's canceled.
Okay. Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce, mostly cancellations. Business after hours this week at Realty Pros. Beginning of the month of April was Tasteful Affair. All those events have been either canceled or postponed and will be rescheduled. There is a webinar. There was a luncheon tomorrow. It's actually become a webinar. So if any of the business community is interested, visit the Port Orange Chamber website and get more details. Roundtable of elected officials, just real quick. I had asked for the health department to come to the roundtable to give us, all the mayors and managers present, an update on the coronavirus. All that information that we got last Monday is woefully out of date, so there's really no need to share that, except that personal care and hand washing and social distance are themes of the day then and still are. We heard from Lois Bolenbach from the River to Sea Transportation Organization about long-run transportation plan, and we took some action ourselves on that tonight. And we heard from the American Flood Coalition, for which we are a member, talking about flooding and sea level rise in Volusia County. That was the roundtable of elected officials. Any other business come before us this evening? If none, I would suggest everybody go to, at some opportunity, go to the city website. We will continue to update information and links on the virus and keep everybody updated there. There's plenty of information on both the city website and the city Facebook page. I appreciate everybody for coming out tonight who came out. I appreciate everybody who is listening and watching at home. With that, stay safe, be well, wash your hands at least once per hour in every other circumstance that calls for it. And let's all get through this together as one healthy community the way we are right now. Let's get out on the other end the way we are right now. Good night, everybody.